Hey y'all, welcome back to my channel. My name's Danielle and I'm the owner of Damn Fancy Creations and the Drunk Flamingo Glitter. In today's tutorial, we are going to be learning how to create this fun vampire lip out of polymer clay. I created smaller versions of this a couple years ago that I created stud earrings with, and if you guys know my glitter admin Rachel Cole, she actually purchased a pair, and this year she suggested I make a tumbler. So I pretty much do whatever Rachel asked me to do. So of course I created a fun tumbler with the vampire fangs and lips. I love how it turned out. I think it is the perfect combination of spooky but also girly and fun. Everything you see listed here will be covered in today's tutorial, but if you guys have questions, please feel free to ask. Don't forget to check out the description where I list everything needed to recreate this tumbler, as well as discount codes from my favorite suppliers. But for now, we're going to go ahead and get started on this tutorial, and I hope you guys enjoy. Alright guys, so to get started, we're going to need some polymer clay. I like to use CraftSmart. Sculpey is also another option. I prefer Sculpey Premo. It is more durable and flexible after it is baked. So if I use Sculpey 3, which is much more brittle, I always mix it with a different clay that I like, which is what I'm doing here. I'm just mixing some of that Sculpey 3 into the CraftSmart brand, which is the Michaels brand, until I get my desired color. If you guys have not worked with polymer clay before, I am just going to give you some rundown tips. So polymer clay is basically a plastic, and when you bake it in your oven, those plastic polymers kind of melt together. The longer you bake your polymer clay, the longer those polymers have time to bond together. So I typically bake all of my clay, no matter the thickness, even if it's super thin, for an hour. And I set my oven to about 255. My oven does run a little bit hot, so you're technically supposed to bake it at 275, but if you put your oven on 275 and it is actually 300 or 315, then you could possibly burn your clay. As long as your temperature is correct, you can bake it in the oven for 2 hours and it will not burn, as long as that oven does not spike. I do always recommend getting an internal temperature or thermometer so that you can actually see what the temperature is versus just the digital reading on the outside of the oven. And baking polymer clay does not hurt your oven. So basically I got 2 shades of pink, a darker pink and a lighter pink, and I'm just rolling them together. This is how I'm going to create my ombre. So I'm just rolling this clay out and I am folding it right at that seam so that that seam will start to blend together. And if you have a pasta roller, this will work 10 times better. I just did not want to break out my pasta roller for this. This was something super simple that I could just do with my hands and a roller. So while I'm getting my color right, I will also go ahead and tell you guys that after you bake your polymer clay, it should be flexible. So even if you have a really thin piece, like for an earring or something like that, you should still be able to bend that a little bit without it breaking or cracking. So if you use the correct polymer clay, it should be pretty durable. And I have tested the CraftSmart brand in the past on earrings, and it is very comparable to Sculpey Premo after baked. It is just a lot more easier to work with. Sculpey Premo can be really hard to work with. It's not as flexible. All right, so after I got my colors kind of how I wanted them, I split it in half and matched up the two lighter color ends. And now I'm just going to blend these colors just a little bit more. Just so we get kind of a feather and not such a harsh line where the pinks meet. So I know I'm going to put these lips on a 20-ounce tumbler. So I have a tumbler out right here, and I'm going to go ahead and form these lips onto the tumbler, and we're going to bake it on this tumbler. So that way when we take it off and then glitter the tumbler, we can put it back on the tumbler and the shape will fit to the curve of the cup. So I'm just kind of forming this in a, kind of looks like a crescent roll, I guess. So I wanted my little vampire to have some plump lips. I'm also going to use cornstarch. This is another thing I use to help the polymer clay from sticking to me and preventing my fingerprints from getting on it. I also use this with Culture Sculpt, if you guys use that. So I'm just kind of forming my lips how I want them. I'm obviously have a thicker center, and then the ends are going to be thinner, like actual lips. So I'm just getting the basic shape right now of how I want them. They really do kind of look like crescent rolls or like fat bananas. So now I'm going to get my feather blade. This is a really thin blade, and I'm just going to roll it back and forth on our little crescent roll to kind of look like the creases that we have in our lips. And if you guys can see, I also have cornstarch on this, which will help it from sticking in those grooves. So I'm just going to place this on our tumbler just so we know where that bottom lip is going to go. And then I'm just kind of forming the shape a little bit more how I want. And now for the top part of our lip, we're going to do the same thing with a feather blade. Just give it some texture. And then we're going to go indent the lip in the center, like where the Cupid's bow would be. I just use my finger, just make a little indentation. You can also use little tools like this, a paintbrush, a silicone tool, whatever you have. So we get a thinner piece in the middle of the lip, and then we have the two sides that are kind of plump. So now it kind of looks like a mustache. So now I'm going to start forming my teeth. I'm basically just forming, it kind of looks like candy corn. I don't know. It looks like a candy corn shape, like rounded squares, rounded rectangles, but the top part is a little thinner, so maybe like a little cartoon ghost is kind of what it looks like. And I'm just putting my teeth on the back of the lip. This part is not going to be seen. So I made two larger ones for the two front teeth, and then two that were smaller for the teeth beside the front teeth, and then we made a fang. So I'm just kind of holding my teeth up next to the bottom lip just to see how long I need to make them. I wasn't sure if I wanted them to be really long and kind of like come down over the bottom lip, but I decided just to keep them like fairly short. But I may make another one with really long fangs. And it may take you a couple times to get the size how you want it. I think I made like 3 different sizes to see which ones I liked best. And once you're happy with the size, you can just stick them on. So now that my fangs and teeth are on there, I'm just kind of going back with the different tools that I have and just kind of shaping that lip to really get it how I want it. I want some nice curves in there. And another thing to point out is, if you guys don't already know, as soon as you add a layer of epoxy, it smooths everything out. So if you want texture on your lip or any other clay item that you're making, just go big with the texture, because a lot of it will be really smoothed out after that layer of epoxy is on top. And for me, for next time, because if you guys remember in the finished pictures, I do have kind of like black lines on my lips, just because I wanted a little bit more definition, because I lost a lot of that under epoxy, even with as much texture as I put on this. So next time, when I'm making these little slashes and textures in my lips, I'm going to go back with mica or acrylic paint or something like that before I epoxy. That way that texture will still be nice and noticeable. So I am just taking cornstarch on my finger, smoothing everything out, getting it how I want it. So once you're happy with your lips, we're going to put this in our oven. Like I said earlier, I bake mine at 255 because I know my oven runs hot. So make sure your temperature is around 275, and I bake my polymer clay for about an hour. So while this was baking, I went ahead and got started on our tumbler. So this is spray painted with white and then bubble bath. This is it's a shimmery kind of iridescent. It's not a lot of color, but I do like it. It's kind of subtle. It just gave everything a little shimmer. And I'm going to use my black spider web. I have this on my website. This is a clear backing, so it's black webs on clear vinyl. I also have an orange and black web on clear vinyl as well. So I'm just trimming mine down to size right now. These are only going to be strips on my tumbler. But I figured it would be easier just to wrap the entire tumbler and then paint over the vinyl instead of trying to cut strips and line them up. So I just drew a straight line on my tumbler with my cup cradle from Cami Page Boutique. And I'm just going to line my vinyl up and, of course, rip the spray paint up with it, because why not? And I got lucky and it was lined up perfectly the first time. So now I'm just going to smooth out this vinyl. I'm going to get my little vinyl squeegee and I'm going to smooth out the vinyl as I am removing the backing. And I do this slowly just so I can make sure there are no wrinkles, there are no air bubbles, anything like that. I'm just going to trim this edge when we get to the end. Normally I would make it straight, but since I'm going to be applying glitter stripes, this part is going to be covered with glitter, so I'm not worried about how straight it is. So I'm just smoothing everything down now, making sure there are no air bubbles or wrinkles anywhere. And I am connecting these webs to the top of the tumbler. I don't even know why I was doing the top, because I was planning on doing drips along the top edge anyway. But here you guys go. In case you need to fill in like little spots of vinyl that may be missing, you can just go back with a paint pen, a Sharpie. And I do the bottom as well, but I think that I waited until after I epoxied. And I think it was right here where I was like, oh yeah, I'm planning on adding drips anyway, so what am I doing? And the bottom had a little bit more, so I decided just to epoxy it first, so that way it was a smooth kind of transition from the vinyl to the tumbler. And then I went back with my paint pen and drew those little lines. So for my little glitter lines, I'm just going to apply some painter's tape, kind of like the width of how big I want my stripes. If y'all watch my tutorials, y'all should know by now that I don't really measure things. So I'm just like measuring. I mean, I guess I'm kind of measuring a little bit, I guess. Just like my way of measuring. I was trying to get the angle of my stripe right, how I wanted it, or figure out how I was supposed to measure. My brain wasn't working for like 20 seconds. So this is my little measuring instrument. It's 2 pieces of painter's tape taped together, just because I want my little stripes about that width. So then I'm just going and checking all of my little lines to make sure they're the same width at the top and the bottom. And, you know, pretty easy. I just can't do the whole math thing. My brain doesn't work that way. I use the creative part of my brain, not the math and formula side of my brain. So we're going to use Kinky Blow Pop for our glitter choice. I thought this pink went well with the pink that I used for the lips, and it also kind of toned it down a little bit. So since a lot of the glitters in Kinky Blow Pop are translucent, they are not opaque, so we need to base paint our vinyl. If this were an opaque glitter, I would not be base coating. I would just go right in with the glitter glue and apply the glitter directly on top. But if I were to do that with this glitter, we would be able to see the webs through it. So I am just using this blush pink from Artistry. This is a ColorFlex paint. It does have a glitter glue mixed in, but it does dry a little quicker than glitter glue. So I prefer just to base with this and then go back and apply glitter glue and apply my glitter with that, since this is such a large section. If it were a small section, then I would have no problem glittering with the ColorFlex paint. And since this is a pretty light color, we are going to do another coat of the paint. And once that is dry, we're going to go in with glitter glue. This is my favorite glitter glue, you guys. I used to be somebody that only used clear spray paint to apply my glitter, or sometimes epoxy, but ever since I tried this glitter glue, it is pretty much all I use to apply glitter. I think it kind of levels out very similarly to epoxy, and I get great coverage just with one application. So I'm just applying this to all 3 of my sections. And then I'm going to take my glitter and just sprinkle it on. And as soon as I sprinkle that glitter on, I'm going to immediately peel up that tape just so the glitter glue does not dry. Look how cute it looks, y'all. So now what we're going to do is get out our Sharpies. If you guys follow Brooke Tannehill, who also runs Cami Page Boutique, she's one of my good friends, and this is a technique that I first saw from her, where she got clear vinyl that had a sunflower pattern on it, and she used Sharpies to color in all of the flowers. So I thought that would be a cute little technique to do with these spider webs. These are just regular Sharpies, and I just picked some colors that would go with the glitter and the vampire lip that I had. So we're just going to be using some pinks, and I also threw in some orange in there because Halloween, you know, pink and orange, they go pretty well together. And I'm just picking a few different sections to color in, not a lot of them. I just want a little bit of color on these webs so they don't look so empty or blank. And y'all can excuse Mo, he is just thirsty and drinking some water. It is a cool mid-70-degree day here in Georgia, so me and all the puppies are outside. Birdie and Cash are just waiting for their dear friends to show up. And Mo and me are just relaxing on the porch. So I'm just picking about 2 to 3 sections on each little panel to color in with these Sharpies. I have had these Sharpies forever. I just use them to doodle with, but how fun is it to color in vinyl with them? And I did not epoxy before I did this. I'm just coloring directly on the vinyl, right next to the glitter. And I didn't really like that yellow color, so I think I colored over it. It clearly has an orange cap, but it looked yellow. So after you get all of your little sections colored in how you like them, I took this downstairs and I spray sealed it very, very lightly a couple times. You don't want to be heavy-handed with this and cause the Sharpies to run. I also did not want to use liquid because I know liquid sealer can sometimes cause different markers to run, so I did not want to take that risk. Then after that sealer dried, I typically use Rust-Oleum 2 times. I took it out to my turner and applied 2 layers of epoxy. Then I sanded it really good, and then we will be ready to pinstripe. So here is my sanded cup, and these are the pinstripes that I'm going to be using. If you guys did not know, I do have a file on thedrunkflamingo.com. It has all of my most popular pinstripe sizes, which is 0.07, 0.05, and 0.03. I typically print out a full 12 by 12 sheet. These were not a 12 by 12 sheet. These were just extras that I had laying around. But I typically print a lot. That way I have lots of them on hand. I can layer them if I want to. These are a glitter pinstripe. It's like an ultra glitter. I get all of my vinyl that is solid colors from a local vinyl supplier, which is Perfect Press HTV, formerly JSI Signs. They are located in Norcross, Georgia. They are about 30 minutes from me. If you guys are local to the Georgia area, go check them out. I have been using them since 2016, when I was using them just for HTV. And their adhesive vinyl section has grown so much. Their store has actually expanded as well. But they have great prices and a great selection. So I'm just kind of, placing some hot pink pinstripes and some black pinstripes just to help pull out the colors that are in the vinyl and in the lip. I'm sitting here watching a lizard on my porch, y'all. I feel like I'm on a live. A lot of crazy stuff usually happens when I'm on a live. I wonder how long it's going to take Birdie to realize there's a lizard crawling next to her. So I'm just trimming the top edges of my pinstripes just to make them even with the vinyl and the glitter. So now I'm just going to put a little piece of polymer clay on the back of our baked lips. And I'm just going to kind of smush them on there where I want them. I am just doing this so I know where I'm going to apply my decal. So my decal is basically 2 little quotes. This is from Dracula. So I thought it was fitting for these lips. And of course that little piece of transfer tape that I had was not sticky enough. And I think what it was is that I cut my black vinyl too deep. I usually just cut on the same setting no matter what. It's always way too deep. So I have to slowly get all of my little vinyl words off of there. So I just kind of had that lip in place so I know the general area of where I wanted to apply my words. Now I'm going to get my others. And then I'm going to put that lip there just to hold the place. Very carefully. And I think that ended up being perfectly placed. So now what we're going to do is get some E6000. I am just using this adhesive because it gets tacky pretty quickly, and I really just need this adhesive to hold the lips in place until I can take it down and epoxy. Y'all, this lizard is staring at me now. It's a little freaked out. He got in my screened porch. Okay, so now that we have our adhesive on our lips, we're just going to place him on there and we're going to let him dry. So once that adhesive is dry enough, we are going to tape off the edge because I am going to be hot gluing the top rim. This is how we're going to do our drips today. Typically, I use epoxy. That is normally how I do all of my drips, but I know that hot glue drips are getting pretty popular, so I'm going to show you guys how I do them. So this is my big glue gun. I love this thing. It has a big old battery and it gets the glue sticks extra hot. So that means the drips are going to be 10 times better than if you're using a small little electronic plug-in hot glue gun. This big one even works better than my newer cordless glue gun, but I think this one is more powerful because it has a large battery. So I typically just let my glue gun sit in there for a second and get really hot. I did not let my glue sit in there long enough for this first drip, so I wasn't really happy with how it was turning out. But the good thing about hot glue is that you can easily remove it. So I just wasn't happy with how this was looking. It didn't drip as well as I wanted it to because I did not let that glue sit in the hot glue gun. So next I am just going on top and we're just going to kind of plop some glue there and let it drip down the lips. And I work in small sections, kind of the same way how I would do epoxy. When I want it to drip, I would add like a small little ball of epoxy. So I'm doing the same thing here. We're just adding small little balls of hot glue. So now that the glue inside of her lip has dried, I'm just going to go in there and peel that right up. and we're just going to redo it. So now I'm kind of starting at the back of the lip, or the back of her mouth, I don't know. And I'm just kind of watching it, and this time it definitely did drip better. I think it was because it was a lot warmer and kind of smoothed out a little bit better. But yeah, I was really happy with how this was turning out. And then I'm just going to add another layer on the top lip. Form a little bit more drips. And I'm just using my heat gun to kind of help it smooth out a little bit more. I have also used my torch in the past. But look how cute it is turning out, y'all. So now I am going to apply the top rim drips. So I am just kind of pumping the glue on there. And wherever I want the drips to form, I do an extra couple of pumps. And then I immediately pull that tape up. I do not want the hot glue to harden with that tape still on there. Then you'll have to go cut it off with a blade, which I have done before, but it is so much easier to just go ahead and pull it when the hot glue is still warm. So I'm just pumping a line of glue and then peeling that tape up. And you guys can see that where the drips are forming is where I do kind of an extra pump or two. And then you can take your torch or your heat gun and kind of hold it on there. That will help melt any little stringies, like little hot glue strings that may be on there. It will also help to smooth out the hot glue. I'm mainly just focusing on the very top rim, just to smooth out that top rim so we don't have like a little shelf, if that makes sense. And look how cute this is, guys. I love it so much. So I'm going to show you guys how I epoxy this real quick. I just take regular epoxy. I'm just using Artistry's Fast Set. It is my favorite at the moment. And we're just going to apply epoxy basically over the cup as normal. This is another good reason why hot glue is a good option for drips. You don't have to wait for it to cure. Puffy paint, you have to wait to dry. Hot glue, you can go right over it with epoxy as soon as that hot glue dries. So now for the vampire lips themselves, I am just going to very lightly cover the lips themselves with epoxy. And then I'm also going to get inside her mouth. I also use little paintbrushes, silicone tools, all sorts of things like that to help me if I need it. And I'm not globbing it on there, if that makes sense. I'm just coating it with epoxy. We don't need a lot, we just need it covered. You guys could see there how I'm just digging that epoxy out from the drips along the top. Oh, Cash is looking at the lizard now, y'all. Oh my goodness. Anyway, so I don't want epoxy pooling in between the drips or in between the teeth or anything. So I just dig it out with my fingers best I can. And then if you need to, you can stop your turner, go in with a silicone tool and get out any epoxy that may just kind of be pulling in cracks or crevices. And then we're going to take our torch and pop all the bubbles. So I applied 2 layers of epoxy. You guys can see here how I did go back and detail it with I think it was black acrylic paint, because I wanted a little bit more definition in my lips. But these are the finished pictures, and I love how it turned out. If you guys decide to try your hand at one of these tumblers, please post it in my groups, because I love to see what you guys come up with, what things inspire you. I think this was the perfect tumbler for a spooky but fun Halloween cup. And I hope you guys enjoyed this tutorial. If you enjoyed this tutorial or learned something new, please be sure to like, subscribe, and share. Don't forget to catch the next video coming up that was picked just for you. As always, if you're looking for more tips, tricks, or tutorials, be sure to check out my Damn Fancy tutorial group, my Drunk Flamingo glitter group, or my Damn Fancy tribe. All are linked in the description. Thanks for watching.